All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the working session for the Avon Grove Charter School. We're going to call this meeting to order. Before we begin, we are going to go through our normal. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone could. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We did have an executive session prior to discuss a personnel matter. If everyone on the board would recite the mission statement with me: to inspire passion for lifelong learning, one student at a time. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead, and if we could do the roll call, please.
Wayne Degler.
Here.
Eugene Steger.
Not present.
Stacy Barno.
Here.
Robert Rainier.
Here.
Kristen Smith.
Here.
Michelle McCrae.
Here.
Deji Akintoy.
Here.
Colleen Preston.
Here.
And Brian Ladman.
Here.
Thank you very much. All right, moving right along. We're going to do the approval of the board working session minutes from October 20th, 2020. Oh, what am I in? Hold on. I apologize, everybody. I clicked on the wrong one. My bad. All right, let's move on. Public comments, Brian.
Nothing specific for the board meeting. I'll hold all the public comment for the for the working session. I'll hold all the public comment for the board meeting after.
Thank you, Brian. Now that I have the right one open, it looks much better. Head of school, Kristen, COVID-19 planning update.
Okay, so this is for us to just discuss. I will cover a couple slides in the board meeting so that when you make a decision it's really up to the board if you want to make a decision for a motion for the board meeting or here, but I wanted to give you the opportunity during the work session, obviously, to go through this information and ask questions before going to the board meeting, because the report card and grading assessments is what we're going to spend a lot of our time during my presentation moments for the head of school report. So with that being said, this is where we are. Obviously, this is what happened this week. So the PDE did have a meeting with all school officials, and they said that they're going to keep those meetings now weekly. That is what they did back in March when this first started. So it's what's happening and will continue to happen this week and going forward. So the PDE is gathering the rising data and trying to advise schools the best course of action. They did say they have their metrics, but if schools are staying true to keeping health and safety in their schools, that if you wanted to keep doing what you were doing, that they were fine with that. So there was that clause that allowed boards to make those decisions. In Pennsylvania right now, the counties have doubled their substantial level of transmission within the 2 weeks. So on October 30th, there was 25 counties in the substantial range. Now on November 17th, there's over 50 counties in the substantial range. This week, Montgomery County ordered all K-12 schools to close for 2 weeks beginning on 11/23 and suspended all extracurricular and athletic activities. Most Chester County schools will continue to use the COVID-19 numbers and outbreaks, evidence of transmissions within their school, staffing levels, and adhere to preventative measures. So that's what I've heard most schools are doing. Data does not show substantial transmission does show substantial transmission in this county, and obviously will lead to more positives or quarantines within the organization. We did see that we had one positive over the weekend and had to quarantine some staff members. So we are seeing with that substantial range that more people have to quarantine or have become positive. But again, not transmissions within the school, transmissions within their own communities. So I have that information. And it will become increasingly difficult if people are getting transmission or positive through the community, and we have to continue to quarantine staff who's had exposure to positive. So that will become increasingly difficult. As far as the family survey data, we did survey, like the board requested, all the families, and we surveyed the teachers again by grade level. So the survey was sent to the 1,262 students that are in the hybrid model. Obviously, we didn't survey the virtual students due to they already chose virtual. So we just stuck with the hybrid model students. There were 674 responses as of 11/16, 251 comments to the board. And I will say that is the most comments I've ever seen the board get at any particular board meeting. And the chart was broken down by division, so you can see where the students are currently participating in the hybrid model. So this is the graph. You see there that option 2 is stay hybrid until forced to go remote based on Avon Grove Charter School COVID-19 transmission numbers. And it looks like most of the bands are saying, yes, please stay the course and continue hybrid. Are there any questions from the board on this particular graph? No? Okay. There were so many comments. I don't know, I didn't know how to even articulate them in a slide. I did try to put common themes in the presentation. So you see here, need to send my child to a daycare facility, is essential employee. I've gotten a lot of feedback from parents about if they're essential employees and they are not home, that if you go and you go back virtual without the whole county shutting down, that they would have to choose something such as the YMCA, where people are working out. Now they're cohorting with different groups of kids, and that's not going to help the health and safety of children that live in this county. And so that was a concern. Obviously, a lot of consistency is more important, harder for schools to keep them safe with the rising numbers, but trying to keep consistency within programs. Kids are having a hard time being engaged virtually, tremendous amount of stress on families. The health and safety are a primary concern, but they also see that health and safety is also on their mental health. They don't think it's safe necessarily. While my daughter loves actually going to school, I don't think it's safe at this point for students or staff. I think we need to put our personal needs and desires aside and do what's better for a greater good. So that's somebody on the other side talking about staying virtual. My child has to attend a child learning center. Even more if we go full virtual, I feel she is safer and does much better academically and mentally if she's in school. So I do find that these comments spoke to the divide in what people need within our community. You do see a lot of comments about kids doing better, that their demeanors change. And so the mental health part of that is clear in some of their comments about their kids. And a lot of the comments and even feedback from staff has been that they always have a choice. Being virtual, they do have the choice to go virtual if they think that this is in the well-being of their kids to do so. So for the staff, the survey was sent to all staff, 149 responses as of 11/16, 49 comments back to the board. Again, it's a ton of comments that the board doesn't usually necessarily see from staff. The chart is broken down K-3, 4-6, 7-12, and non-instructional, which would include administrative staff, office staff, cafeteria facilities, and so forth. So this is that, and you'll see it's not as clear of what divisions need or what they think is the right thing to do. The administration or the non-instructional staff thinks staying the course. And then again, K-3, a lot of keep the high-risk students in school, but let others be virtual for safety. 7-12, same thing, virtual. And then 4-6, it was stay the course. So a variety of opinions, and across what teachers and what families need. Some of the information that the teachers shared was parents were able to make the decision on their own, so that staying the course, they're seeing the progress, leaps and bounds in their kids, that their kids are happy to be back in school. You also have nervous teachers with travel plans and not knowing what's outside of this school and what people are doing. They have seen positive difference with having students back in school for interventions. It's a disservice if we don't serve our students. Being proactive versus reactive. It's only a matter of time before we go back. However, it wears on mental health, being every day at the school and knowing that there's some safety concerns. Local and state health boards receive serious considerations despite the outcome of our internal polling on the subject. And then just again, we are a school of choice and customer service, and there are families that need us to be open. So again, variety of opinions about what the right choice is for Avon Grove Charter School. Currently, right now, we did add a confirmed case to our COVID numbers. So with the one contractor, and again, that was outside of school, it's a total of 3 people, students, 1, and that was from before. We didn't have any this weekend. And then before, when we reported last week at that special meeting, we had 7 employees that were mandated. Just over this weekend, we had to add 6 more. So we actually had to quarantine 6 employees. And that almost equals what we had to quarantine for the month of September and October and November up to this week. So that is pretty telling too. That's 13 total. So there was a KMC outbreak. And so we do have a teacher with a childcare issue that's causing. So I think we're going to see some of that going forward with just more quarantining because of exposure outside of the school. Obviously, the numbers you saw last week, but on Friday, our number was 140.6. So we went from 84.9 to 140.6. So again, the Chester County Health Department said in 3 weeks, if you're in the very high, that virtual was what they were recommending. But they also put the disclosure that if your school is doing well with your numbers, that you had the ability to stay the course in your schools. This is the very high, which it was originally here, but again, speaking to it, if there's evidence of transmissions within your schools that are low or you're having staffing level issues, obviously these are things that would cause the school to close if you decided to stay the course. And obviously making sure we continue our preventative measures and withholding, making sure that we are staying the course with holding everybody accountable to abiding by our measures. The PDE had a call again this week, and that was part of the conversation about full remote learning. If there is a substantial, which is more than 100, and they are saying you can follow that or follow what the Chester County Health Department is saying, which is stay the course if you're open and having low transmission within the school. So the options that were presented were option 1, which was incident rate over 80 for 3 weeks, which is what the board voted on. So this decision that the board would have to make is for November 30th into January 22nd. Now, there can be talk about that January 22nd date changing, but that's what the option was on the table. High-risk students come in phases 1 through 3 and continue to come in with staff members, staff in the building. Option 2 was remain in the current hybrid model, transition to virtual based on the in-school transmissions, operating constraints, or staff in the building with staff in the building. Option 3, incident rate over 80 for 3 consecutive weeks. K to 6 staff come in, 7 through 12 go hybrid, and then staff in the building. Option 4 and 5, I did not include in this conversation because at this point, it's not what the staff or the parents were voting on, but that was everybody virtual until January 22nd after November 30th, and option 5, which is 5 days a week you come to school. So some considerations, if the board decides to use in-house measures for going virtual, there needs to be some clear parameters for determination. So for instance, the shortage of substitutes and staff available to cover class, what's the threshold, the number of staff in quarantine and or testing positive. If we don't have enough staff, we can't stay the course. What are the metrics for determining which divisions, buildings would go virtual and which one would remain hybrid? So there was a lot of conversation around if you decide that K to 6 stay in hybrid, but our 7 through 12 go virtual. How did you come to that conclusion? Why would you take some divisions in and out? If option 1 is selected, how are we determining which students would stay in the building, which is our special education students? And there wasn't just special education students. There was some students that were high risk that were in there. So the case can be made for any child to remain based on academics and social emotional. Obviously, you saw that in the parent comments. So when we start selecting who gets to come to school and who doesn't, making sure that we're very clear about why that happens is important. So a timeline for selecting students, notifying parents, and this will affect busing in that they're in busing right now. And then how many buses do you need if everybody goes virtual and the district's changing, the busing is going to be affected. If virtual extends into January, are we going to push the January 22nd date out? I mean, obviously, if we are in virtual till January 22nd, asking parents to make decisions to come back or not come back, we'd have to look at that timeline. So new surveys and enough time to plan. And if going virtual at any point, teachers need time to gather materials, pick up for families, pick up art supplies, all of those things that we did similar to the start of the school year. And then winter sports would be a part of some of this conversation too. So at this point, this is a work session. So I'm looking for, feedback, questions, so that we can talk through some of those things now.
Thank you, Kristen. If anyone has comments or questions, just raise your hand. I'd like if any of the board members do have questions or want to speak. Go ahead, Michelle. Thank you.
I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about the staffing. And is there a tipping point, Kristen, that you think we would get to where we can't, the number would be too large?
I mean, the staff members that we had to quarantine this weekend were primarily classroom assistants and support staff. And so we were, and after school staff. And we were able to do that pretty easily. I think that if teachers can teach virtually while they're being quarantined, and we have enough support staff to cover their classrooms while kids are in, while teachers are teaching virtually, it will work. When we run out, it's going to be, I think it will be telling when administration starts to have to cover and we start pulling everybody. I just don't know what that threshold will be like unless we know how many staff members are really out. So I would say, if I had to guess, I mean, it would be close to over 30 people. Like I know Westchester had to close, school district had to close a whole building because they just didn't have enough staff. And it was one of those things where it was over the weekend and it was a letter to parents that weekend. So parents who are choosing to stay hybrid would have to be flexible to, we just got notice that we have to quarantine 30 staff members. I don't have enough coverage, so we can't go to school on Monday, kind of thing. Brian, I don't know if you want to add any number talk there. I mean, that was me ballparking that. Do you have anything?
I think it depends on the building and it depends on the staff and it really depends day to day. So sometimes sometimes we have a group of teachers who are out, just normal PTO that doesn't get picked up and the stars align and we're able to cover it internally easily some days, and some days it's very difficult to do. So I mean, I think it's hard to say from an operational standpoint at what point, like what percentage of your staff being out deems you would have to shut down. I think it really depends on at what point are you unable to internally and externally cover. And that's kind of a day-to-day and situational thing. Because we can get creative, but it does get to a point where we've exhausted everything. And then I think it also then is that due to a mix of quarantine and normal PTO requests, and it's a one-day thing, or is it due to a large number of the staff having to be out for an elongated period of time. And we're looking at, hey, we're not able to do this on day one. We're not going to be able to do it day 1 through day 10 when we have that group of teachers who are not going to be able to be coming into the building. So that's a long-winded answer to say, I think it's hard to put a single numerical value to it, and it's very situational.
Thank you. And I understand it's hard to predict. So I appreciate you commenting on it. I just didn't know how close we are right now with the current quarantine numbers.
Yeah, currently we're okay right now.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Michelle. Any other board member would like to, I know we went over this last week, but any other questions or concerns? Brian, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for this, Kristen. And just jumping off of that uncertainty, I think that's a really tough way to operate. I have no idea what the right answer is, but waiting for Rome to burn is, to me, it doesn't seem like that's the right thing to do, to come in one day and see that we don't have enough teachers and then everybody suffers. And, we've talked about flexibility, but we also constantly hear about sufficient planning. And I don't know how you balance the two. I mean, right now we're faced with what I would say is a natural break. I don't know if it's the best way to go. Certainly to return virtual for a short period of time. People are going to do what everybody wants to do or is used to doing for the holidays. And that may put a whole bunch of people at risk. And we're left to trust that everyone is going to do what's right, what's smart, and what's safe, but it's not fun. And we have staff, we have teachers who are clearly concerned. And I don't know how to balance the public's concerns with our staff and teachers. And I sure wish there was an easy way to choose.
Thank you, Brian. Hopefully we'll find that. I see 2 hands. I saw Rob first. Hang on, Deji. I'll come right back to you. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, and to add to what was just said is the balance and being prepared, giving parents enough time to react and be able to substantiate their children being at home if in case we have to get them home. I don't want what was said earlier that the next day they had to be home, because parents have to plan and we have to allow for that. And we also have to balance the teachers and the student safety. So it's just got to be a well thought out. And as Brian said, it's got to be planned. So we can't wait till Rome's on fire, as he said, to steal his term. But I think we all have to come together and determine what that plan is, and let's make a plan and help everybody get through this.
Well put, Rob. Thank you very much. Deji, go ahead.
Yeah, to Christian, maybe your opinion on this. Are the options we have the only options? And the reason I ask that question is, I know that Montgomery County has mandated that essentially the school to be closed for 2 weeks post sort of the Thanksgiving holiday. I know I heard that Owen J. Roberts did the same thing and also pulled it back at a later point and said they're no longer going to be doing that. We took a very similar approach to start the year, which was, hey, let's wait out approximately 14 days from the end of the summer as people get back home from their vacations and so on and so forth, before we go back to school, so that if anybody is going to get sick, they likely would have gotten sick in that interim. And so we would be able to assess, or they would be able to assess personally, like coming back to school and also transmitting it to the rest of the school community. Is that potentially an option that we could take this time around? But again, there's no right or wrong answer here, but I would love your commentary around, like, is that an option, and does that option sort of fall in line with what we have done before? And then maybe just a last comment before I let you answer there, Kristen, if you don't mind. It is apparent that, like, the parents in this situation, what they want is fairly loud and clear from the data that you presented there. But I think there is, Rob, to your comments, and Brian, to your comments, there's another group of people in that equation that don't have a choice to keep their children home or have a choice to stay home in this discussion. And I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that balance is key here in whatever decision we decide to make.
I think that, I think the numbers are not going to change drastically in 2 weeks. I think you're going to continue to see an increase this entire winter into Christmas, into January. I do think that if you give them a 14-day, 2-week break, you can see maybe from Thanksgiving who possibly was exposed. But the problem is you're still seeing people go to dance or go to the grocery store. So with any time, even within the family during Thanksgiving being in, they can be in contact with somebody who is positive. So, and because I don't think our transmission is going to change drastically within this month, I think that they're likely to be exposed to somebody positive is always out there. I don't think that 2-week or 14-day is going to make a difference. However, I think that if people are smart and they follow the proper protocols and that our safety measures, any positive cases that have come in here, I think we've done a good job making sure there hasn't been outbreaks because we're following proper PPE and guidance that has been giving to us by health officials. I don't know, I mean, outside of that, like parents scrambling to find childcare and what that looks like there. And I know childcare is not our issue. It's a parent's issue that they need to work out. But if we're looking at the health and safety of all people and where they go, I don't know how that situation is any safer than this situation. So I think it's a really hard because you're trying to do what's in the best interest for the health and safety of our kids and our staff, and sending them to organizations like the YMCA, I don't think is necessarily the healthiest choice for essential employees that need to put their kids somewhere. So that's my personal opinion. I do understand the agony of trying to do the right thing. I do love that our school has given parents the option, no matter what, during this whole time, to be virtual. So I think that if they are concerned, they have every right and can, without this whole time, do the right thing and go virtual if that's what they want to do. If they need if they need to be in school for social emotional, because of academics or because it's in the best interest of their kids, they have that option. Now, I understand the staff members, like I get that piece. I really understand it. And I understand how this is scary. It's scary for everybody. It's not just scary for teachers. It's scarier for grocery workers. It's scary for police officers. It's scary for all professions. But I think that us being smart, and I said wearing masks and shields and making sure they're not eating in rooms in close quarters, I think those are all really important things that keep us all safe, no matter what time of year it is and no matter where you work.
I think that if to loop back to the 14 days, I think that was why we pushed that in those options to go virtual till January 22nd. If you look at the calendar and if we return after Thanksgiving on November 30th and you were to shut down for 14 days to give that period, you're not returning until December 14th. And then you're going back out on Christmas break 7 school days later. And then we would have to do it again for Christmas break and the holiday break. So then you're coming back, January 4th. And from the holiday break, you would quarantine for 14 days. You wouldn't be coming back to school till January 18th. And then the semester ends that following Friday on the 22nd. So that's kind of why we picked that date in those options anyways.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Kristina. Brian Ladman, you had your hand up again. Go ahead.
Sorry, this may sound silly, but have you performed a tabletop exercise to walk through procedures if a kid is positive in class and how the response would look and really working up what's going to happen with kids ping-ponging in and out of quarantine back into a classroom? I know that may seem silly, but I think that may help us find our breaking point pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as tabletop drills, no, I haven't done that with administration. It's really, is Tasha on this call? It's me, Tasha, and Holly that have walked through each case. And what happens is if there's principals or teachers involved, we call the health department For every case, we submit a form, we put all the information, and the health department walks through who needs to be quarantined. We kind of do the tabletop with the health department, and then the health department advises us, and then we walk through every staff member what needs to happen. So when this weekend, when that happened, obviously, once we discussed this with the health department, or what knowledge we've had up to that till the health department got back to us, we walked through that with the staff as we went through. So that's where I guess we've been doing tabletops, but really just with the people involved and the three of us and the Chester County Health Department.
Thank you, Kristen. Any other questions or comments? I guess at this point, the only thing I would add is, I know for me, and I know all my fellow board members have been looking at this since last week. And it isn't, to Brian's point, it isn't a magic answer. There isn't something that we can pull out of a hat and say, this is the right fit for everybody. So there's a lot of numbers out there. If you watch the news, there's a lot of fear. So we're trying to do the best we can for everybody. So I know it's a really tough decision. Is there any board member that's having a feeling? I know we're going to vote on this in the board meeting. Is there anyone feel what direction they're looking at or would like to share?
I'll start out. I'm kind of finding it hard to ignore the fact that the pull to return to virtual is strong. My daughter is unfortunately a virtual student, and it's to protect my parent, my mother-in-law, who's spending the time teaching her, and it makes them most comfortable to go in that direction. My kid wants to very much so be back in school, but I don't know how you ignore a community spread, because inevitably it's going to unfortunately work its way in, maybe on a micro scale like we're seeing now, but it's going to disrupt normal operations. Or I think our positivity rate, I looked today at noon, we were back up to, I think, 16%, and that was just Friday to yesterday. So it is not looking good moving forward. I don't expect that to change, and likely to get worse, like I said, as we move forward. But I don't know. There's certainly plenty of science to support having kids continue in school, but then you're left to react. And I don't know if that's good for anybody's mental health, to constantly wonder and react. And so I'm probably right down the middle and can be pulled in either direction. But I think we can't get life back, right? And so can you be too cautious? Sure. Do we pay a price in mental health? Absolutely. But I think not that our decision is going to lead to the school having to close due to infections, but I'd feel terrible if that happens. And I can't help to think that I'd be somewhat responsible in going in that direction.
Okay, Brian, thank you. So, I think I'll go, because I asked the question and I should have given my opinion first, just to make it fair. I agree with you, Brian. I think it's very tough. I'm actually of the point, and one of the things I'm very grateful for is that the school did plan ahead and create this choice system. The choice is, as we're hybrid, I can send my child, which she comes Monday and Tuesday, or I can choose that I look at the numbers, I look at the news, I look at the reports from Kristen that she sends out every week, and I say, enough is enough. I'm going to bring her home. But that's only part of the equation, I feel. The other part is the part that none of us can control, and that's once they leave the school. It's the responsibility, and I'm looking at everyone that's watching this on YouTube, it is the responsibility of the parent, the teacher, the administration, to make sure when they leave the school that they continue to be responsible, wear your masks, do the right things. Thanksgiving's coming. I know it's a tough one, but think, make sure that we're thinking of what our actions will do as a repercussion should somebody get COVID from whatever they're doing. You can go to the grocery store and get it. I get that, but we just need to think. But long story short, I'm still on the, I think the need for the child is really important. I think our numbers, what we're doing in the school and what we've really done for the school for cleaning is really is telling. I mean, it's showing a great thing. I think, yes, you're right. I think the numbers will eventually catch up and then there's nothing we can do, but I think we need to do what we can for as long as we can. I think the kids deserve that. They had a really terrible end to last year. They had a really terrible start, and now here we go again. So if we could do it as long as we can, I know parents have a lot to do. They've got their jobs. They're trying to support their children. They're trying to support their families, and this is all thrown a big monkey wrench in. So I personally am leaning towards option 2, and that's just keeping everyone hybrid for now. I don't personally like option 3. I don't think we should split. I get the reason why, but I don't see why we would say half the teachers should be able to come in and half shouldn't. I think we're going to, for me, I would go with option 2, and then we're going to eventually, I think, end up in option 1 at some point, whether the state steps in or we just can't support with staff. I mean, I think somewhere along the point, the choice will be made for us. And I think we need to do what we can for those students as long as we can. So that's my long-winded answer. Does anyone else want to?
Dwayne,
Okay.
I don't want to disrupt the flow of this conversation. I know the auditor's in here and has a presentation too. But I was hoping that within the next 5 minutes, we could wrap this up, or at least give the auditor 15 minutes to be able to give his presentation.
Yeah, I was thinking that as I was rambling on. I apologize.
No,
So-
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure the board knew
No,
somebody was.
no. I saw Stephen, he kind of blacked himself out, so
I know.
I'm sure. So I saw 3 hands. I saw Michelle, Colleen, and Kristen. So if you think can keep it to a minute, I think we could do it, because I think it's important that you guys get to say what you need to say. So Michelle, go right ahead.
I think we all understand that the kids need to be in school and that they do have the option and the families can make their own decision. And I'm glad our school's gone that direction. My concern is the break coming up. And we've all known we would see more cases after Halloween. We'd see more after Election Day. And people are going to go out at Thanksgiving and have gatherings. I wish that wouldn't happen, but it would. And if they come in Monday after the break, there's nothing we can do about that until it's too late. I'm appreciative of all the controls the school has, but the timing is really difficult right now. If there wasn't this break and we would just keep going, we could see what direction and how we're doing. But I think what's making it difficult is we have this hard deadline coming up that we either go in and hope for the best, or we step back. And I'm keeping under a minute, so that's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Michelle. No, and we'll talk about it at the board meeting again. Colleen, go ahead. Okay, she's going to wait. That's fine. Kristen, go ahead.
Is there any way to chicken out and wait until Tuesday to vote and see if the state steps in on Monday or Tuesday and makes a decision for us? Because by that point, we will have had 3 weeks in a row of the greater than 100 number or greater than 80 number. And I feel like that eventually someone, before knowing the kids are going to go back into school on November 30th, part of me feels like somebody is going to step in and make that decision for us. So maybe I'm just being a chicken, but I don't know, do we have to vote on this tonight, or is it something we can give one more week and look at whatever else might come out, what other districts might be doing, trying to make sure that we're making the best decision possible. But also if we say, oh, let's go stay in hybrid, and then as a Monday or Tuesday, the state's like, just kidding, we're shutting everyone down until such and such a date anyway. Like, then this is all for nothing.
Well, and I think that would be up to Kristen, and I'm going to move on to the auditor, but I think it comes back to what Rob and I know Deji had said before, and I think Brian, consistency in making sure the parents can plan. So let's hold it. Let's go ahead and we'll move on. I don't like to cut this short, but we do have the auditor on. I want to make sure we get to everything. So we're going to move on to the fiscal year auditor presentation. Stephen, I think I could hear you. Say it a little louder.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. So go ahead. If you'd introduce yourself and go right ahead.
All right. My name's Stephen Kutzaflakis. I'm with Barbecue Thornton Company, and I am the partner at the firm that oversaw the audit of the charter school for this past year. We audited the finances for the year to June 30th, 2020. Okay, here's my PowerPoint. So, yeah, there's my name. Next slide, please. Okay, so as a result of the audit, I think you mentioned before, we were engaged to audit the charter school's financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2020. We gave the statements an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion. So basically that means that we feel that they're fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. It's a clean opinion, so it's the highest you can receive. The standards that we followed were auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, and government auditing standards. They refer to that as the yellow book. Under those standards, we put a little more focus on internal controls and reporting any deficiencies to management and in compliance with laws and regulations. So it's a more thorough audit than a non-yellow book audit standard one. We do review the internal controls or financial reporting for the purpose of planning our audit approach. We do that as part of our risk assessments. So based on the review of internal controls, there's nothing in the report that we consider to be a finding or material weakness. So from that standpoint, the charter school, we feel the controls are in good shape. We did have 2 recommendations that we issued to management in a separate management letter. And these are really recommendations for how to enhance your internal controls. One had to do with the accounting software. The charter school continues to use QuickBooks. And we know that, the last couple of years, while doing the audit, there were glitches in the software that management had to spend time to fix and bring a third party in to help correct that. So we do have concern with that, and I understand management is exploring different software upgrades. So that is in the works. And the other recommendation we had was, it seems that this past year, or we noticed for a while, but the charter school has a higher reliance on paper documents. We recommend maybe consider going towards a paperless system for various reasons. So those are the 2 things that we had in the management letter. Next slide. Just continuing, we also did a single audit in accordance with Office of Management and Budget's uniform guidance. And that is required because the charter school spent more than $750,000 in federal dollars. So when you spend more than $750,000, we have to do a single audit, which is a compliance audit with laws and regulations, with federal laws and regulations. We gave the charter school an unmodified opinion on compliance with no issues of non-compliance and no internal control deficiencies over compliance. For the year, total federal dollars spent by the charter school were $793,000. And the 2 programs that we focused on as part of the single audit were the special education cluster and the child nutrition cluster. That's your school breakfast program, your school lunch program, and your IDA funding that comes through the IU. And that equated to 67% of your total federal dollars spent. We generally rotate the programs that we look at each year. So these are the 2 we looked at this year. Next slide. Just some general comments on the audit approach. Our audit is a risk-based approach. So basically means we tailor our procedures towards the areas that we perceive to have a greater risk. The way that we assess risk is by making inquiries of the board. This past year, we did interview Dwayne and Rob. We talked to them and discussed charter school and how the year went, if they had any concerns, anything that we should be made aware of, and so forth. We do interview management, Kristen and Donna, and some employees. We vary that from year to year. We document the school's internal controls as a risk assessment procedure. If we see an area where there's a breakdown in controls, so for example, if we're looking at your controls over disbursements and we see there's no approval process, there's not there's no checks and balances, that would be an area that we dive into deeper because we perceive that to have a higher risk. There's no oversight. And then we do a lot of analytical procedures, look at historical trend data, how this year compared to previous years, how to compare to your past budget, comparison to known facts. If we know that you have a large capital project in place, in progress, things like that. We review minutes, contracts, and agreements. And that's once we do that, that's when we start diving into the numbers and, confirming revenues with third parties and bank balances with the bank and debt with the bank, and looking at invoices and so forth. So that's kind of a big picture of how we go about our audit. Next slide. Just some numbers that you'll see in the statements. These are your revenues from comparing 2020 versus 2019. Your largest revenue source by far was your charges for services. That's your billings to school districts, $28.3 million versus $26.8 the year before. Your second largest revenue sources were your grants and contributions. That's mostly subsidy from the state and federal government, passed through PDE. That was $941,000 this year versus $969 the year before. That's down a little bit due to COVID, doing the school shutdown in March. And then your other revenues were $400,000 versus $321 year before. That's interest and this miscellaneous inflows. So next slide. On expenditure side, this shows the same thing, 2020 versus 2019. Your largest bucket for expenditures is what you spend on instruction. By far, it's $15.4 million versus about $15.3 the year before. Other large, big ticket things are support services, depreciation, which is the green bar, 1.7 versus 1.4. The reason why that's higher this year is because of the project that was done a year and a half ago, Early Learning Center. It was 2020 had a full year depreciation versus a partial year the year before. And then interest expense, the blue bar, 1.21 versus 1.23 the year before. That makes sense. It generally goes down as you pay off your debt. So saying that, for the year, if you compare your revenues and expenses, the school had a surplus of about $3.3 million. So it was a good year. Okay. Another big number you'll see in your statements, and this impacts every school district and charter school in the state, is just your PSERS, the liability for the PSERS pension plan. It's currently about $48.6 billion underfunded. So every participant in the state that has to pick up their fair share of that liability in their financial statements. So for this year, the school's portion of that unfunded liability was 0.0617%, which equates to $28.8 million, as you'll see in your financial statements. And that's basically allocated. It's your payroll divided by as a percentage of the total payroll covered by the plan. That's how it gets allocated. And it is on a 1-year lag. So the data that PSERS puts out is as of June 30th, 2019, and that's what's used in your statements. And then the OPEB portion of the PSERS plan was about $2.1 million underfunded. So the school's piece of that was $1.3 million, and that's allocated the exact same way as the pension plan liability. So that really drags down your statements when those are added to it. But like I said, every district is the same across the board. And finally, the last slide, some things I'm required to mention is this year there were no material audit adjustments. We did have a few minor immaterial ones that Dawn had posted, nothing alarming. No waived audit adjustments. What I mean by that is sometimes an audit adjustment will come up as part of the audit process and management may elect to waive it because they don't perceive it as being a material number. We have situations like that where we're required to let the board know that we did have waived entries. So that's why I'm just mentioning that. But there were no waived entries here. We did help Donna with the entries to record the PSERS net pension and OPEB liabilities. There's large numbers I talked about before. We helped her make those entries. And then finally, we had full cooperation from Donna and her staff. This has been a challenging audit period for us as a firm because the whole COVID and some clients let us come in, some don't, and the information flow has been slower at some places. But at your charter school, I want to say Dawn and her team didn't miss a beat. Everything that we requested was given to us timely, which helped us get done and present here tonight. We came in and spent a day in July, a planning day, and gave Donna the list of things that we need for the audit, and then came back in late August into September and finished up the final leg of the audit and issued a draft report in October. And here we are tonight presenting the final audit, which was released last week. And No disagreements with management. If there were, I'd be required to mention it to the board, but nothing came up during the audit where we had a disagreement with that I need to bring to your attention. But other than that, that's kind of a high level overview of the audit results. And I'll take any questions if there are any.
All right, does anyone have any questions? Let me move my screen so I can see. No, I think the part about that you did was good in the software. That was great. Rob, have we made any progress on that, just out of curiosity?
Yes, Donna's brought both of the companies that were recommended in. She's still analyzing some of the results of what they presented. Some areas were strong, some areas were not. So we're still looking at both of them. They're both viable candidates at this time. So hopefully we'll make a little more progress over the next couple of months, and we'll be able to report something out. But I gotta say that this audit, I've been treasurer for a while. This audit and the last audit, having this company do it, these guys are great to work with. And 3 years ago, I believe, Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, we had some issues with an audit and some auditors, but this is a great company. I want to applaud how they approach it, how they work with us, and very thorough, and I really appreciate them.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Rob. If there's nothing else, thank you, Steve. We appreciate
Sure.
it. And
Thanks for having me.
hopefully we'll see you next year.
Okay, great.
And Dwayne, I can just give you an update on the software because
Please.
we're down to 2. We finished the Blackbaud Discovery yesterday, and we have the Sage Intact customized presentation tomorrow. So
Excellent.
we should definitely have some new information in the coming weeks. But the business office staff have been great, vetting both. We had 3 down to 2, and now we're looking at the customized programs, trying to find out what's the best fit for us short-term and long-term, something we can grow into. So it's moving along very nicely.
Well, good. I applaud the traction on that. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Stephen, and thanks, Rob, for all you're doing. All right, we will move along. We're going to go on to policy for board review and consideration. Donna? You're muted, Donna. Go ahead and let's do this quickly and then we can finish up because we're getting tight on time.
All right, thank you. So I'm just going to go through the policy board actions that will be required for this evening. So board policies that have been distributed to the board for the 30-day review and administration is requesting approval for this evening is there's 4 policies. Finances, policy 4001 for budget planning. Finances, policy 4004 for budget adoption. Then operations, policy 6010.1, use of school-owned vehicles. And then lastly, operations policy 6010.2, and that is for transportation for field and other school-sponsored trips. So these policies were distributed to the board last month. I have not received any board comments or requests for revisions. So they are slated for approval at the public working session. Upon approval of these board policies, administrations will be requesting the board approve the rescinding of the following policies. These are older school board policies that were drafted and approved in 2010. So the 4 policies are the budget hearing policy, the budget planning policy, the budget preparation policy, and use of charter school vehicle by staff. All new policies and rescinded policy recommendations have been forwarded to the board for their review. For this month, for policies first read for the 30-day review, there are 3 policies that are presented to the board. First policy under the finance section is policy 4014, payroll authorization. This is an updated policy based on the board doc policy. It's fairly similar to what we used to have, a couple of revisions. So we've decided, so it's been recommended that we update this policy. Payroll deductions. This is a new board docs policy. We did not have this policy before, so it has been prepared and presented to the board for their review. And the last one we have is falls under the student section, policy 2051. It is for homeless students, and the policy has been updated for state updates that were released in late August. The three policies have been through legal review and are provided to the board for their first read 30-day review. Any questions or comments, please forward to the business office, and we will reply and include all board members. We're looking for the board to review these policies over the next 30 days, and we will be requesting board approval at the December 15th board meeting. At that time, when these policies are approved, the board is requesting we rescind two older AGCS policies, actually just one. It's the payroll authorization policy, as it will be superseded by the new board docs payroll authorization policy. So thank you, Dwayne. That's all that I have.
Okay, Donna, thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, I was muted. We still have some time. I think that covers, let me just double check. Everything for the meeting except for comments and final comments. So I want to go back to the COVID and the decision for the school to make sure there's any more questions or discussion. Because when we go in, I want to make sure that we, number one, have a united front of, and at least feel good about where we're moving. We can have differences of opinion, that's fine, but I want to make sure that you know, we have everything we need, the information, and we feel good, because it's going to be, it's a tough decision, and I know I've been struggling with it. So if you haven't had anything to say, or if you'd like to say something else, now's the time.
I did want to comment really quick, Dwayne.
Sure.
The school nurse want me to tell you that she did have a course on contact tracing. So that was part of her training, and then works with us obviously on every case, and that the new travel restrictions were just implemented today. So that's something to be mindful from. If the state closes and requires all teachers and students to go back, that would mean the special education kids too. Just food for thought out there. I just want to make sure you know that if the state does that, that doesn't mean any of our plans we wouldn't supersede any of the state guidance if they come out quarantining everybody. And then Ryan, I know you're on this call. Did you want to add something about your kids? Ryan Taylor.
Sure. I just wanted to add that there are a number of students, even today, we were just going through our numbers at ELC, and students who are not in phases 1 through 2 or 3. So the students who are here 2 days a week, there are over 50 that are struggling as is with virtual learning. So I just want to put that out there, that we already have a high number of students that are struggling with virtual learning on the 3 days a week. So we wouldn't be able to bring them all back into a as high risk students because of the high number of students. So I just wanted the board to take that into consideration as well.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much. Colleen, you had your hand up.
I just, my lean is to keep them in, until we have to pull them. I just think that the numbers have been going up and our numbers have not really. So I realize that the concentration in the general population is just getting higher, and I see that, but no one in the general population is doing the amount of things that the schools are doing. And I think really across the board, we're really seeing that the schools are not, everybody's not shutting down. We've seen schools that are staying open. We've seen schools that have been open since the beginning, since even before we were open, 5 days, everybody in. I really just struggle with the fact that we don't know sort of what the future is going to hold. And I don't want to preemptively shut this down, because it's so important, I think, that they're in school. I think that it's sort of being discounted, not here generally, as to what the sort of the mental strain really is on the kids. And that's certainly not to discount the concern, because I do have a great amount of concern, especially with the holiday. And I sort of wish that Thanksgiving was a week earlier, so then you could have some time and get them back in, like closed for 2 weeks and then open. But I realize that it's not sort of a just time wise, it just makes it really complicated. But that's sort of my gut is that's my lean, is to keep them in, not discounting the other concerns, and certainly agree that some advance notice is wonderful. And I wish that we could give more. I wish that we had more answers, that we could give some finality, but I think what we just have to work with is what we have. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Colleen. Stacy.
I think, Ryan, I appreciate you sharing that information. That was going to be one of the questions of how many kids are in the next phase and what the numbers were, and whether or not they could be included in option 1, because that heavily weighs on my mind as far as, are we serving all students? And for that reason, because we could not bring that high number of students back, that really sways my decision to looking at option 2, because how many more kids, that's children that you've identified within the school system. We know we can't manage 50 additional students. And, you know, how many more students are there? And I think as time progresses, that we're going to see a higher level of those students. And I think for that reason, that piece of information alone is really weighing for me to move forward with option 2. I'm really concerned about how many students, how are we continuing to assess the students? I know that there's surveys for the older students and high schoolers, but really what is that number growing? And is it the benefit of, continuing to allow that at least group of students to continue to be here at least 2 days a week, continue to support until we have to make a decision. And as a parent, I respect notification. I need as much notice as well as a working parent in the situation. But yeah, I think based upon the numbers of the high risk students and students in need, I'm going to weigh towards, more option 2 at this point.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm just going to go around. There's make sure that if there's anything more to say, that we get it out and you feel good about it. Deji, do you have anything? And a no's okay, but if you have anything, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think for me, I think everything that we could talk about so far has forced a lot of indigestion over the last couple of days. But I think what's important in my mind is I think about sort of the situation we're in and the determination that we're being forced to make. I'm probably leaning towards option 1 as my option. And that is because there is a group of people that in that school that don't have the choice to stay home and to be away from the situation. And given the holiday season, I know what my family plans are, and I have spoken to a few other people in the community, and I know what the plans are. So it is inevitable to me that people are going to do what they choose to do, regardless of what the situation is. And so I think for me that warrants a little bit of caution before we put people back into the classroom, given what we are seeing in the greater community at the current moment. So I guess I'm a little bit more cautious at the current moment.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you for being honest. That's great. Kristen Smith, as you move your head, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, and I mean, I'm leaning towards option 2. I just feel that, I think that our school as a whole is doing a fantastic job. And like Kristen said, if parents have to find an alternate location to put their kids, why are they any safer at another venue than they are at our school, where the transmission rate is almost next to nothing at this point? And I do know that it's a bigger concern on a bigger scale than just our little community. It does affect the greater community as a whole. But I just think that there's so many more benefits to kids being in school and actually being around their peers. And I'm gonna call out my daughter, who she's never been a school kid. She doesn't like to go to class. She doesn't like, she's much like I was at her age, but she loves going to school this year because there's 2 days she gets to go be outside of the house and have a change of scenery and be a little bit more social, like a 9-year-old girl needs to be. So I just think that for our kids' mental health, more than anything, they need to be around their peers as long as possible.
Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate that. So Brian and Rob, I know you both had said some stuff earlier. Just want to make sure if there's anything else. If not, I think we're coming to the end, but I want to make sure you have a chance to say anything. Brian, Rob, anything?
I'd just like to add that I thank everybody for voicing their opinions, and I can't agree more with the idea that the kids need to be in school. I feel like I keep coming back to the fact that I think the kids will be safe, but I'm concerned about the at-risk population that we have in the school, which is the staff, the teachers, who unfortunately are the ones that are going to get hit hardest by this, if it is to make its way into the school. And I'm torn because I feel like we're being asked to make an extremely tough decision. And by selecting option 2 and just moving forward, that to me is like the last decision we'll have to make, because then we just react. We don't decide. That it gets in the school, it's a problem, we react. The state does something, it's a problem, we react. That to me, that's not a decision, and that's unfortunately not planning. And that's where I get stuck. That's what I'm having problems with personally. And I don't know how to resolve that.
That's a good point, Brian. Thank
I
you.
just-
Rob?
My only, oh, sorry.
Sorry, go
I
ahead,
was
Chris.
just gonna say a comment to that real quick, and I understand about the reacting and stuff, but my experience from what our school did when we had to react in March, I was so proud of our school, how quickly we got ahead of probably every other school district in Chester County, and we were online within days or maybe a week. So the reacting part doesn't concern me, because I do think that our administration and our staff really has a plan for day one, we shut down, this is what we're going to need to do. So I think if I'm going off of anybody's reaction, I trust our school's reaction more than my own.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kristen. So we've got a couple minutes, so let's see. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm in the camp that we did react, but it was minimal effort. I wouldn't say minimal. That downplays it. The kids weren't required to do as much back in March. Now they're required to do more. And while the kids that are at home have converted to the online system, the other kids won't have as much time to react and prepare for that. And I'm being a finance guy, I'm conservative all the way. I'm going to call it like I see it. And my camp is to plan more than react and let someone else tell us to do. That's kind of in like what Brian's saying, but like either way, it's going to be a hardship. And I just don't, that's where I draw. I don't know what to do. Like it's going to be a hardship if it's A or it's a hardship if it's B. So I'm kind of torn too.
Yeah. Michelle, yes, you please.
We're all struggling so much, and I hope everyone understands that, because we see all the sides. Like we got all the parent comments, and I read them, and I read the teacher comments, and they're all so valid. And it's bringing out points that, just in me and my family, I haven't thought about. And it's heartbreaking. No matter what decision we make, it's going to be heartbreaking because we're going to disappoint people. I think I'm inclined to think that special ed and those students at higher risk are so important to have in school. I'm worried that if we have anyone who wants to opt to be in school hybrid, that it's going to also increase our chances that we can't service those kids. But then again, where do you draw the line? So it's very difficult. I am worried about the staff, where it's not that easy for them just to click hybrid or virtual and then they don't have to come in. and they are at higher risk than the students. We all know that. So it's very difficult, and I hear all the sides. I am prone to be a little bit more conservative because I am worried about the staff, but I think no matter what, I am inclined to make sure that we at least have special ed in.
Thank you very much, Michelle. All right, well, I am going to, let's move on. Let's close this out. Is there any other comment from Kristen or Brian or any other person from the school before we move on?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn? Rob Renier, do we have a second?
Joanne, I'll make a second. Stacy Varno.
I had Michelle first. She had her hand up first. So, so we will adjourn the meeting and I'll see everyone on the board meeting. Thank you very much.